let me tell you what could hurt. Thousands of dollars, lots of time wasted, missed opportunities for memories, trauma for me now, because you can go listen to other podcasts for what I used to have to do for that. That was brutal. And just that's just a few things, just to name a few, right? There is always a trade-off,
right?
Even if it seems harmless. And a lot of these products are like that, right? In the literature that you're referring to, it's harvested at the same time, which is not the reality in farmed cattle. Scientific stuff. Yeah, you know her? And I go, well, like I know her, but I don't it's internet. I don't know. Internet friends.
Internet
friends.
Yeah, I was the same way. So for everybody tuning in, we're talking about names, where our names came from. We got a Starbucks name. I got a really creative one. It's really hard to pronounce. It's pretty, it travels widely across the world. Joe Miller. It's many origins of my name. It's really complex, but I was the same way.
My name's supposed to be male. It's supposed to be Emmanuel, and then my mom said, I don't like it. I'm going to be creative. It's going to be Emanuela. So that's how my name got put into place.
Wait, so are you Emanuela for full?
Yeah, that's my full.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes.
Is Ella only what you let your friends call you? Just so I know where my exclusivity lies here. Am I like close friends, or am I like, don't ever call me Emanuela kind of vibe?
So I don't really care. It's really just like whatever is easier. Like, for example, my current PI is probably going to refer to me as Emanuela just because she wants to refer to me by my full name. Yeah. My partner refers to me as Ella. So Jackson is just like, he calls me Ella.
Right.
That's it doesn't, I don't have an exclusivity.
Okay, cool. Good to know. But how many people refer to you exclusively as Scientific Snitch?
That's a good question.
You know what? There's this one guy in my lab who walked into the lab one day and was like, Scientific Snitch. I'm like, oh no.
How funny is that, right? Where you kind of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this definitely, I've had that experience where it's not that you're hiding yourself online because you're posting yourself online, but you almost think no one sees it. And then when you realize people that see it, you're like, ooh. So it's kind of strange.
I was at the Swiss event, and there's this massive couple, just massive bodybuilders, and like, hey bro, nice podcast, like all mean in her voice. And I just kept walking, this is a previous podcast we had, and I just kept walking. It's like, bro, and I'm like, what? It's a nice podcast.
Like they were talking to, you're like, oh, you're talking to me.
Thanks. He's like, no man, you do a good job. I was like, dude, I thought I stepped on his girl or something, like tripped over a foot or something. I'm like, oh man, this dude's fired up. I'm like, but it's all good. No, I have to admit, I started referring to you in email, Ella, because of one time when you responded to one of my emails, you said Ella at the bottom. I was like, boom. All right, know what to call her. Dear Scientific Snitch.
Yeah, it's nice video. Here. I like Ella. I think Ella is like the easy name. Emanuela sounds like you're scolding me, so that's like why I go by Ella, because it's just like
the trauma.
The only time that somebody says Emanuela is when I'm in trouble, so then I'm gonna be like, oh, what?
That's so funny, but I get it. Yeah, it's kind of similar with me. I mean, to your point, you said you don't care. I mean, I for those watching on the internet, I really don't care what they call me, because they've called me something worse before, guaranteed. So yeah, it's one of those things where as long as it's all about the context of how they call me. So yeah,
good stuff.
Not really a lot of people call me Edin. But anyways, sorry about stealing the show on that one.
That was a good start. I think we're all warmed up, ready to dive into some fiber talks. Always good. Got some fiber.
I mean, start off by the fact that I consumed 130 grams of fiber yesterday. So there's that.
For context, I think I consumed, I'll have to double check, but I think I consumed only a little more total carbohydrates yesterday. And that's not because I'm proud of that particularly, but I think that's so impressive. I would just not having a good food day, you know what I mean? But transparency, I'm a real person. Sometimes I forget to eat, and that was one of those days yesterday. Yep, 152 was my total grams of carbohydrates. So for those of you listening that don't know that, it's impossible for me to be anywhere close in terms of fiber.
I mean, to be totally honest, I'm very I have a really high appetite regardless of like whatever I do. I've always had a really high appetite. So for me, the 130 grams of fiber, the majority of that is 2 Quest bars and this one really high fiber pancake mix called Scotty's Pancake Mix. And that's pretty much all of my fiber aside from the pound of vegetables that I consume.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm not consuming it because it's like, oh, hee hee ha ha, I'm gonna have fiber powder on my cupcakes. It's more
Right.
like I eat it because it's like the only thing that keeps me from eating more.
Yeah. It's really funny that you say that. While satiety is obviously one of the biggest factors, I have this inkling, and I mean, you know it too. You're very highly educated, and you like to make videos that are like actually type videos to that topic today. But I what's really funny about fiber is I truly eat it just because I just imagine this is non-scientific, by the way. I imagine my gut thanking me every time I hit that like 35. Like I create a mental checklist. Minimum, just like with steps, minimum 8,000 if I'm having a really bad day, minimum 8,000. And I'll walk around the house until I hit it, or 35 kind of grams of fiber. So even though I didn't eat a lot of carbs yesterday, yeah, one of those wraps is an easy way for me. The Mission wraps actually was my way of getting a whole bunch more fiber in as well.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
my partner loves these little birria like street taco low carb fiber ones from Mission. They're
Yeah,
apparently really good, but
yeah, they're fire.
I'm allergic to wheat, so I can't even eat those.
Oh no.
It sucks.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. If it makes you feel any better, my pancreas is on a permanent vacation, so I got that going. So you're
Type 1, type 1?
yeah, I'm type 1. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
that's why I once upon a time, this is a story again I've never said anywhere, is on my diagnosis day. I was young, by the way, but on my diagnosis day, old considering a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, but I was about 14 years old.
Oh,
And they're like, yeah, something's up. Your pancreas isn't working right. So we're just doing some tests. They leave you there for like 3 hours in the room. They're like, we're just running some tests. We're going to see what's going on. And they pretty much told me, they're like, you either are fine and there's nothing, but that's unlikely, or you have type 1 diabetes, or you have pancreatic cancer. And my dumbass, right? You guys are going to love this. I'm sitting there like, man, I hope I have pancreatic cancer. Diabetes would suck. And yeah, right. I know now. Okay. I was 14 at the time. And it was also like 2:30 or 3 in the morning kind of thing. So yeah, it was not my brightest moment, but thankfully I think we've risen up from there in terms of intelligence. So
There you go.
For anyone that's listening, if anyone knows anyone that's had pancreatic cancer, it is terrible. Don't wish that upon anyone, and definitely don't wish that for myself. But yeah.
I knew somebody who had pancreatic cancer and pancreatic cancer cachexia. It is not fun.
No.
That being said, type 1 diabetes also isn't fun. And I've known people who caught it really late. So did you notice like what was going on beforehand that made you like need to go in?
Yeah, so it was in 9th grade. It was 2009. So you guys can figure out my age from there. It was it was in 2009. I just started the 9th grade, and it was October that I was diagnosed. But the whole summer before, there was like a pretty steady weight loss. And for context, I know I seem like a thick boy now, but like back then I was like 130 pounds soaking wet, And so I was always the thin kid, always super skinny. Then all of a sudden I got to a point where my mom was like, how much do you weigh? And this was probably, September-ish. And I just hit like 95 pounds. I was like 95 pounds. Mind you, I played really competitive tennis. So my mom was sitting there panicking as a parent thinking, I'm not feeding him enough. He's just losing weight. Poor woman. And I'm eating like 4 meals a day. And then, yeah, I think it hit one point where I didn't want to admit that anything was wrong because I've always been like that. And God bless my girlfriend Jessie's soul, I'm still like that. So I was drinking water out of the sink in the bathroom and then walking over one step to pee, rinse and repeat for hours. Like I wouldn't leave the bathroom for hours. And when people say, oh man, I pee a lot, I must have diabetes. I'm like, no, brother, you would know if you had diabetes. Like it is hours of not leaving the bathroom. So yeah. And then my mom was like, what are you doing in there? and I don't know how much I can say on this podcast, but I'm pretty sure my mom thought I was, beating my meat kind of thing. And, you know what kids do, I guess. And so I don't know. I would love to ask my mom. I've never actually asked her what she thought in that moment, but she's like, yeah, what are you doing in there? And I was, you're trying to be quiet. You're trying to hide that you're not struggling in any way. I didn't want my parents to stress out about it. So I was like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. She goes, no, you need to go see the doctor. I'm like, nah, shut up, Mom. It's fine. And so I had like a test, whatever, that week. So my parents are very gung-ho about schooling. And so what ended up happening was my mom was like, okay, we'll book your doctor's appointment like an hour after that test is done. So I went, did the test, and had another one the next day. I remember it was like super busy timing. And then I had to skip tennis, which I was like, oh, bummer, dude. I wanted to go play. So I ended up going to the doctor, getting a urine test. Surely they found sugar in my urine. And then after that, they were like, okay, we'll get you to do some blood work. So I did some blood work. And then they said, we'll hit you up. If it's nothing, don't worry about it. We won't hit you up, but we'll let you know what happens. And then that night, that was the 15th, the Thursday. And then the Friday, the 16th, it was like I said, like 2 a.m. They called my parents in the middle of the night. They're like, get him to a hospital like yesterday. And so they just woke me up, drove me to the hospital, and I got to skip a class the next day where I had a test, which was dope. But I'm pretty sure I redid it anyway. So it's like grade 9, so it doesn't matter. Or for you guys, they call that, what do they call that? Freshman? Yeah, freshman.
Yep.
Freshman in high school. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun for sure. In hindsight, it's always a funny story, but it's for a lot of parents, it's probably pretty stressful, I imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure it was stressful. I mean, type 1 diabetes can be fatal in some scenarios, especially if you have like one of the hyperglycemic attacks.
Yeah. And in all fairness, I haven't had my control overall could be always improved, of course, but I don't think I've ever had it where it's like that bad. I've never gone into diabetic ketoacidosis, which is what you're referring to, the hyperglycemic attacks and hypoglycemic attacks. I've had a fair few scary ones as well, where I've had seizures and stuff like that. But we can joke about them. They're all good. It was after a Nickelback concert, so it was kind of like, you kind of deserved it a little bit, but it's good. It was a good time.
I mean, I think that like talking about type 1 diabetes and just diabetes in general is a pretty good segue into fiber, because fiber can help you regulate your blood sugar. So
100%. In fact, if I was gonna say, when you guys are talking about fiber, and when you're working with people, and I guess walk me through like what is your ideal ratio when you're creating your dietary or your meal plan, or like you're watching what you're eating and going, man, I'm eating X amount of insoluble versus soluble. How do you regulate that for yourself, or auto-regulate that, I should say?
So, at least for me personally, I don't really care, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about either soluble or insoluble, some of the calories that I consume alongside that soluble fiber, because let's be honest, I'm not going to be consuming straight up soluble fiber powder. That would be disgusting.
Yeah.
But like the fat, the other carbs, the protein that I'm consuming alongside it, some of that is going to be quote unquote caught up in the fiber and is just going to kind of move right through my digestive tract. So I feel like it just kind of cancels each other out. So even if I'm absorbing 2 calories of fiber but losing 9 calories of fat, doesn't matter as much. So I don't count fiber. I don't think it's necessary. And I've never noticed it to be necessary for any of my clients, because their satiety goes like they're through the roof. They're super satiated. So like, what is I just found it so funny that Goob was fear-mongering freaking low-carb bread out of everything. Out of everything to fear-monger is just low-carb bread.
The funny thing for me, obviously we're talking about that post that Goob made, Goob _U2, I believe is his name.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen one of his videos before, to be quite honest, until, when it kind of happens like a landslide when people start tagging me or sending things to me. It's like all at once or nothing for a while. And that one was one of those where I got a ton of them. And then you made a response. Rather, I think TNF made one maybe at like similar timeline, same like day or two. And then I got one of his first. and I didn't even check it yet. I just saw his picture. I was like, I'll get to it. No disrespect to TNF. It was just that I had a lot going on that day. And then I saw like you with the Goop background, and I was like, okay, this must be this must be serious. You know what I mean? This must be, if people are sending me multiple posts about it, I'm like, okay, I should dial in and see what's going on here. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. My favorite part about it in terms of like a misinformation spread type thing is the end bit, or kind of middle to end bit, where he was discussing the potential for why, some of his clients, he felt that some of his clients might have been going down a wrong path and being lied to by companies, and why they were struggling to lose so much weight was because of tricks like this that manufacturers do, so that they can market things as lower in calories. And so what I want to say to that is I completely understand where he's coming from, where yes, it is technically a loophole. Like, yes, technically soluble fiber would be 2 grams more. And in Australian case, in the case of Australia's labeling system, they actually have to, if it's soluble fiber, they have to add 2 calories. I don't remember what I said there, but 2 calories per gram of fiber that's soluble, right? So they actually have to label it as such, which is great. And like, I completely understand where he's coming from, that when you turn it over, there's a mentality about, oh, it's lower in calories. It's just strictly lower in calories. But I also want to like revert it back to what's the original goal here. The original goal is definitely to get, especially in the US, because we're talking about the US, this is the US labeling system. In the US, a majority, 9.5 out of 10 people do not get enough fiber in. So when I sit there and I hear that, I'm like, I think the word in English is tone deaf. That's just tone deaf. I'm like, yes, you're right. Like, that is a loophole that they totally manipulate for, 10 out of 10 people to see and be like, oh, it's lower calorie, I'm taking it. But by purchasing it, even if maybe it's a little bit more expensive. So I actually don't know the pricing of those. I've never seen those specific products in my life. But if that product allows said person to get 32 grams of fiber, that is literally the only reason that one person that just bought it got their fiber intake for the day. So then it begs the question, was that a problem in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big point. And I think another point to kind of back that up is that 9 times out of 10 people in the US not following dietary guidelines that are actually good. Like, I'm not talking about the food pyramid. I'm talking about like My Plate and the actual dietary guidelines.
Yeah.
Physical activity guidelines. Where are they? They are out the window. And then to your point, fiber intake completely out the window. And then on top of that, if you are eating that many fibrous rolls that you are accruing an extra 300 calories or an extra 100 calories in soluble fiber, I think you have another problem, because you are spending over like $30, because those bagels, they were $11.99 in New York. So they were hella expensive for 4. If you're eating the entire bag because you think each one is 70 calories, and let's say they do have like 80 calories.
Yeah.
I think you have a bigger problem there, that you ate the entire bag of 32 fiber gram.
Is that what it is? Like a 10 calorie-ish difference?
Yeah, it would be like around 10 calories to 20 calories at max. Because even when you're talking about soluble fiber, not all of it's absorbed. And then on top of that, it can like take some other stuff with it. So I believe those rolls also have some, they have a lot of insoluble fiber. They're predominantly insoluble.
They were mainly insoluble. I would actually even argue that the soluble fiber, they did have soluble fiber, but I would actually argue that it's a negligible amount.
Yeah. So it would be like between 70 to maybe at max is the roll. Because like we all know manufacturing is going to be uneven. So maybe it's like 100 to 70. And 100 is the most I would go. But if you're eating all 4 rolls, I think you have another problem on your hands then.
And to that point, I'd say I'd start looking at, like, I actually put it in the comments section, I think of my post, or maybe it was your post even. Somebody had like commented back to me about something, and I said, like, let's put this in perspective. And I kind of said 2 different examples. It is like the argument against aspartame in Coke, or I use Diet Coke as an example. And the reason why it's the exact same is because, sure, aspartame might have some adverse effects. And the number, and I say that, heavy asterisks on that statement, because it might have it at, we kind of don't really know exactly what dose that would be because it's so high. So in humans, at least. So let's say that it was that average, that you hear the number constantly, like 36 cans. It's probably a lot higher than that, and also is dependent on the person. But let's say that it's 36. Like, I just need people to do a quick math there on how much just pure fluid, how much is 36 cans, right? They're 355 milliliter. That's roughly 12 liters, 3 gallons, right? No, a little less,
That's
a little more than 3 gallons.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Just Coke Zero or Diet Coke, whatever.
Oh, and on top of that, Diet
And
Coke
that's per day.
Has caffeine. Diet Coke has caffeine too. So then you're also adding, I believe it's 50 milligrams of caffeine per can. So that's 34 times 50. That would be
36 times 50.
Oh, 36 times. That's even worse. 36 times 50.
Like an extra 100.
Was that 800? Is that 800?
That is approximately, I believe, and if that's 50 milligrams, about a gram, about 2 grams of caffeine.
Yeah. But by the way, that's
for the aspartame.
per day to potentially see an increase in risk of adverse effect. So I use that same argument to suggest, and it is, if you take a step back and acknowledge the perspective that I'm coming from, it's that, sure, you might see a problem with it. Just like, sure, you might see a problem with that extra 100 calories. But the bigger issue is not actually that extra 100 calories. It's the caffeine, as you said, or just the sheer amount of liquid. By the way, that's acknowledging in that example that you drank nothing else, just that, no water, no nothing. I don't think most people can even drink 12 liters in a day, but maybe one time, like as a one-off, as the challenge, but definitely not regularly, and definitely not in today's economy, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with the bagel.
And oh my man, that amount of caffeine would have me bouncing off the walls, and that amount of carbonation would have my acid reflux working up so badly.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So there's like heaps, and the same thing goes with those bagels though, right? That's why I drew the parallel, is that the bagels are also, like, sure, you might have an issue with those calories. Like I said, like, as in, sure, you might have a fat gain increase, but it's not because of those bagels that you did. Like, there's something else that's going to hit you before you start gaining fat because of those bagels, if that makes sense. Like, you're going to go broke, for example. And he, look, I'm sure he's a super charitable guy. I don't know what he is like off of social media. I just know him from what is posted on social media, but I know he likes his watches. He'd be spending a Rolex a year on bread. Like, come on. You know what I mean? Actually, more than that. He'd be spending more than a Rolex, and the one that he bought in that video, which is like 18 grand. So he'd be spending more than that on just bread, just to gain some fat from it. So I really don't think most people would have to worry about that, because I don't even think most people will own a Rolex in their lifetime. But hey, it is what it is. I'm not trying to yuck your yum. You know what I mean? If you want to try to gain fat from these bagels, by all means, give it a shot.
Yeah, with that, I was going to say too, when you guys are interacting with people, especially with so much information out there, that's so nuanced, so detailed, just to take it from the top for those who maybe are checking in and kind of catching up to the conversation, is there targets that you usually look at relative to, do you usually look at, I guess to frame the question would be, do you look at, their size, weight, goals, etc., as far as like fiber take per day, or do you look at a % of total carbohydrates? Like, how do you usually structure that from like a nutrition standpoint, if you're trying to give someone some kind of a target or range as far as like how much fiber they should take in?
So me personally is pretty simple, but also nuanced, as you said. I mean, we just had like a 6 to 8 minute discussion on like one little fact.
Sure.
And that sadly, that's what's needed, right? Because nutrition is personalized. Like, we don't like the same things. We didn't grow up the same way. Ella had Italian parents. I had Bosnian parents. My parents cooked completely different from her parents. Thank goodness that my parents did cook, period. You know what I mean? And some parents don't cook at all, don't know how. So that's why I think it's super important. But simply put, I kind of just recommend guys 35 grams, women 25 grams as kind of like a benchmark. However, asterisk on that again,
Sure.
I would say meet them where they're at first and foremost. So while I think guys, like I aim for, 35 on a bad day, I'd like to be hitting 40, 45, 50 grams of fiber. That just shows me that I'm eating a lot more whole foods. And when I'm doing that, I'm typically consuming a diet that makes me maintain a leaner body composition. And sadly, people give a shit about that, how I look. So even though all they see is chest up, so it is what it is. But yeah, to that point, I mentioned that I like to meet them where they're at. And what I mean by that is if they're currently consuming 0 to 3 grams per day, even I know 25 is quote unquote easy for a female. I also like to just ease them into it. And the reason why I like to ease them into it is not, I think most bodies can handle it. Sure, some people can't, and that's fine. So that's one reason. But most people can handle going to the recommendation, but it's kind of more of like a demoralizing, I can't do health. When I approach people and when I have a conversation with people, winning is really important. And what I mean by that is small wins, like consistently hitting, instead of, let's say I could say 10,000 steps a day, but instead I say, hey, maybe let's aim for like 6,000 to 7,000 a day. Consistently bang that out. All right, then let's move up. If you can do 6 to 7 on average, then let's move up. And even whether they're a client of mine or not, I'm still giving them these, and if they ask for my recommendation, that's kind of how I'll frame it is I'd rather you like consistently improve a little bit and then take it from there when you're ready. And same thing there is like if 10 grams of fiber feels like a lot, whether financially or just struggle to creatively find options for food, then I would say, okay, once you've on average been able to hit 10 grams of fiber per day, okay, let's move you up. Let's move you up until we can get you to that goal of 25 grams or 35 grams per day. Actually, but I'll tend to like recommend to people like as a minimum, those are their goals. So it's not really like a fixed target. And as Ella already established earlier, it's really possible. And I know, what's his name? Liam, Plant Slant. He's doing like 100 grams a day too. So while some days I can get up there, on average, I'm probably 40 to 50.
And I guess just to put a little bit of I guess I always like to do the actually there's a mechanism behind it.
Dude, that's all of our content though. Come on now. The fact that he said that, I was like, that literally is him too. So
literally. And either ways, the actually I guess here would be that actually the reason why people can't always get to the like higher ranges and why like easing in there, like there's a reason why easing into the fiber intake is a lot more comfortable and a lot easier to do than just going full cold turkey right into it. Your gut microbiome. So you can't break down soluble fiber if you don't have the correct gut microbiome, at least in the sense that, so when I say like correct gut microbiome, obviously you already have gut microbes. It's not like they're non-existent and they're just going poof, but you probably don't have all the right population of gut microbes
and in the right quantity to break down the increased amount of fiber.
So like having that, slowly building up your gut microbiome is a lot easier to do and a lot more comfortable. I didn't go from 25 to 100 grams overnight. I went from 25 to 100 grams over the course of a whole year. So it's like, it's good to ease into it with everything else in life. Like even with exercise, as you said, like I wouldn't tell somebody with high blood pressure and struggling with like heart palpitations by walking upstairs to go do a 20-mile run. That sounds a little bit.
Yeah, go do a Barry's HIIT class, man. Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, so it's like easing into it, always gonna be good. But like then again, minimum recommendations. Like if we can get there, that's always gonna be the goal.
Yeah. I'd like to add to your point that it's kind of like we do actually have some literature on this, not directly, but we have some literature on this discussing the time it takes to adjust to switching to I believe it's vegan or vegetarian. I'm pretty sure it's a vegan diet. So it usually takes people on average like 3 to 6 months to stop feeling like their gut is going to explode. And that's a pretty good example of like a stark contrast between going from whatever their previous diet was. When you go vegan, typically you're consuming more fiber just in general. And I think I can make that extrapolation without too much, without too much fear of speaking in absolutes. But you typically end up being, more gassy or whatever. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to it, like you said. And sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it could take, depending on the person, maybe they got a stomach of an ox and they can do it in like 5 to 10 days. Who knows? But
yeah, a couple questions I'm sure is out there. Maybe some people listening would be, okay, so I'm gonna start tackling this fiber thing. So I guess the 2-part question I'd have for you guys is, what would be one thing they could either supplement or add into their food intake to help with that digestion? Is there anything they could do to help with the increase in fiber? I guess A would be the first question, and B would be, are there any go-to sources that you think are pretty palatable? Most people tolerate them. Again, there's gonna be nuance and individualism and stuff like that. But what are kind of like your go-tos? I guess that'd be my kind of couple questions that might be floating out there.
Yeah. So I guess I just wanted to first briefly say, because I know I actually know 2 microbiologists who are wonderful human beings, and they have educated me time and time again. Probiotic supplements are bullshit. They just are. Like, if you're taking a pill form of a probiotic, 9 times out of 10, it is bullshit because it cannot survive past your stomach acid. So,
see, I just want to point out that I wouldn't have spoken on that because I don't know it personally off the top of my head, but that is kind of the general understanding that I had with, I say limited knowledge. I have knowledge, I get it, but it's not in that field. So I'm not going to be giving anyone lectures on it. So I appreciate you saying that, because I wouldn't recommend it ever to people because of my limited knowledge. But yeah, so thank you for confirming my bias.
I think it's a very big myth that people think that, oh yeah, I need this really expensive $59 probiotic supplement. Little do they know that those bacteria are not going to survive past your stomach acid in that little tiny itty bitty capsule that dissolves within 2 seconds. Like, that is very unlikely. And maybe you have a few that survive. It's a better probiotic supplement? Yogurt, kimchi, pickles, anything that can kind of allow those probiotics to ride through your stomach rather than going in, dissolving into your stomach acid, and then being broken down into a bunch of itty bitty pieces. I hope that analogy works. So
yeah, that was a good one. Another one that I like to add to that one is for it, if you live near any Asian grocery stores or something like that. So my followers, I mean, I know for a fact now, Ella has some followers in Vancouver. So if you have access to them, Yakult is what it's called. They come in like little small packages. They're a yogurt based drink. And they're also a pretty good source. But like I said, it's kind of cheap, one shot and done. And it's not a $60 supplement that is effectively useless. It's like a $3 to $4 for like 10 pack. You know what I mean? Like $3 to $4 for like a 12 pack of these little drinks, and they taste delicious. So, but on the other hand, for like, quote unquote, the naturalists, I would also go and recommend like some of the things that I think are no brainers is obviously fruits and vegetables. However, for those of you that maybe are financially struggling, if that's the case, or just like me, are lazy / don't go to the grocery store enough or don't have time to. So there's a lot of different reasons why this might fit your lifestyle. But I like keeping canned foods. People hear me talk about that all the time. I'm a big advocate for canned foods and also for frozen fruits and vegetables. So some people claim that the textures don't agree with the textures of whatever. Great. There's options for both of you. And all of these fruits and veggies are picked at peak ripeness. And that helps you hit more frequently. For example, today, they didn't know this if I didn't tell you guys right now, but I was running late to the podcast, right? And I wouldn't have been able to eat anything if it wasn't for canned corn and some mackerel. So not pretty, but most meals aren't. So it's better fed than not. And that was a good way for me to get some more fiber in, right? And that's just one lazy example, but there's heaps more.
Speaking of like canned food, just because now that I know that you like canned food, have you ever
Okay.
tried King Oscar sardines and kipper snacks? They're like my freaking favorite thing in the world.
Okay, so we don't have them in Canada, but I saw them the other day when I was in the US, like maybe a week ago, and I was like, huh. That was the first time I'd ever like seen them. And so now that I know that they're good, okay, now I'll give them a shot, and I'll have to report back. But I have not tried those before. But I mean, I feel like most of those kind of things are one, affordable. The reason why I like cans so much is because I lived as a student in a place where I needed just for example, when I was a student, I had like an apartment, yes, but you know how it is, and when you have roommates or whatever, you kind of just have your own mini fridge.
Little corner,
that's kind
yeah.
of it. So most people, or if you're doing like van life, I don't know, whatever people are doing, it's hard to have enough freezer space for everything. And I like to advocate for, getting a Ninja Creamy. I think they're great if you can. So my goal is to maximize the space that you have. So that's why I love canned products. They don't require, if the power goes out, you don't have to worry about everything thawing in your fridge, or rather thawing in your fridge, and so on. So that's why I really like canned stuff. But I'm a huge advocate for frozen stuff too. It's super easy, and you can just throw it into, salads, or make stir fries and things like that. Those are some of the Lazy Boy specials. And they're super filling, and on top of that hits that fiber intake. But the one thing I think is like you have to have is chia seeds and flax seeds.
Oh yeah. And then also dried beans. Dried beans are a crazy especially, I know that like you probably would have to have a little bit of extra equipment, but if you are in an Asian household, I am half Filipino, so I know about the Asian rice cooker. If you got that, beans,
I do.
rice
Of course
cooker,
I do. Yeah.
fantastic way to get fiber in. So and
Now,
it's protein.
This is a question. Yeah, the bonus protein. That's obviously ideal. The bonus protein. My question is, and this is a serious question, as the visual listeners will know, I'm white. Okay, so do you put other things? This is solving an argument at my house, so this is a really personal issue. Do you put non-rice things in your rice cooker?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed. Now I'm going to be like, all right, Jesse, listen to this. Timestamp 35 minutes. Please listen to this. No, okay. I've actually never done it.
There is a dish where you put a sweet potato and rice into the rice cooker and you just mix it up a little bit. And that's already a dish. But there's also rice cooker cake, which is a legitimate thing. It's like this really puffy, bouncy cake. It's so freaking good. You can make stew. You can make, specifically like beef curry and stuff like that. So good. Chicken adobo you can make if you want.
I do love chicken adobo.
So
that's a fire Filipino dish, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I funny enough, back to try to bring it back on topic, she mentioned a sweet potato, and I was actually going to say another like low-key hack for fiber intake is like Japanese sweet potatoes. I mean, sweet potatoes in general, but Japanese sweet potatoes are low-key great. Sorry?
Purple sweet potatoes taste so freaking good.
Yeah. Also great source of fiber, I think. I was watching something someone sent me, and they go, there's a girl freaking out. She's like, there has to be a better way to get your fiber intake. I'm so sick and tired. There's no way people are eating leafy greens all day. I was like, leafy greens are low-key like actually one of the worst ways to get fiber in. I mean, they have fiber, but it's like, I don't even know what the analogy would be. It's kind of like just eating straight rice to get your protein intake, like
lettuce or fiber is not really that great. Like lettuce is mostly water, isn't it?
Yes, but sorry, I was thinking more along the lines of like spinach, kale, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in general, they're all not great. I mean, they have fiber, but like it's not like wow, not a significant source.
Bunch.
So I got a selfish have to ask. I got to go back to something you said. So is it beans and rice in the rice cooker? You're cooking them together, or is it just the beans in the rice cooker?
You can do both. So you can cook them together, which is if you do red beans and rice, it always tastes good. Like red beans and rice, solid mix. You could also do lentils and rice. I've done red lentils and rice and then blended it up and then cooked it on a pan and then made little pancakes before. I did that a long time ago when I was like pescatarian. It was very good. I'm no longer pescatarian.
Well, I used to do.
I prefer the balanced diet. Just
yeah, likewise. I mean, I've gone through the phase as well, but you were a lot more creative than I was. I also was like a college bro, but I would I would like to add though that the lentils is also a fantastic way to get some sneak protein and fiber in. And you can do it if people are listening and maybe have a child or maybe a picky eater as a partner that they treat as their child. You can also add lentils to like pasta sauces. I actually think it was Liam that I saw that from, and I've tried it since, and it is delicious. You truly don't notice it's there. So shout
like
out
vegetable
TikTok,
pasta
Instagram.
sauce. Have you
Yeah.
tried that yet? Oh my god,
Yes.
it's so good. The peppers and the carrots. Ugh,
Yes. Fire. Shout out TikTok. My eating has been great since.
I'm always looking for
learned.
different rice mixtures because it's
There's only so much chicken and rice we can eat, Joe.
Right,
There's only so
exactly.
much chicken and rice.
Right.
And
No, it's
broccoli.
I think I use a lot of like just pink salt, rice, chicken stock, blend it, and then I'll find something to mix it with the protein source, and pretty plain, but I'll
There you go.
definitely have to try some of the stuff here. I'm gonna have to rewatch
Gets the
some of
job
these.
done though. Gets the job done.
Yeah, especially in a hurry.
Have you guys ever tried Real Good Chicken? I'm so curious. It has been my obsession. It's been me and my partner's obsession. We go through approximately $30 worth of Real Good Chicken. It is half of our grocery bill. And you can do the math. So that's a lot of Real Good Chicken. It is this
So it's like it's like a breaded chicken.
Yes,
No?
except it's not only is it gluten free, but check out the protein content. It is low key really good for protein per 4 ounces.
Oh, it's actually very similar to just a gluten-free version of the Costco ones.
Yep.
Pretty much. Like the Costco ones are immaculate, by the way. If you're looking for a protein source and you're lazy / I don't know. I'm running out of reasons to. If you just like good chicken that's frozen and easy to air fry, yeah, that's actually I think higher in protein. Crazy.
It is so good. Like it tastes exactly like fried chicken. Even
but this feels like a perfect segue, Ella. I gotta interrupt you.
Oh, go right
ahead. has potentially genetically modified safflower oil, sunflower oil, grapeseed oil, and or non-GMO canola oil. They felt the need to clarify that one, but the rest were maybe GMO. Nice.
I'm so scared of the genetically modified food that has less pesticides on it and is more, I guess, ecologically friendly. I'm so scared of it. So absolutely terrified. It's just so scary. Don't you think? Less pesticides. Who wants less pesticides? We all want more pesticides.
I think there's a consensus of people, or I don't know if it's fair to say that, but I think there's definitely a group of people that would like to see all farmers who are not rich, by the way, just absolutely eat shit for like 2 years. You know what I mean? I think they just want to see them suffering, and which is really funny to me because that's who you're harming by making these kind of posts. As someone who works a lot in ag and works with farmers, and by works with, I mean, I'm in fairly close communication with a lot of farmers in the beef industry, in whether it be cattle farming or dairy or even tomatoes and olives and things of that nature, and avocado. And so to that point, I like the consensus that I've heard. Again, it's my anecdote because it's my personal experience of the people that I speak to. So small sample size, perhaps. But they've all come back and said, you know, none of them like these videos, right? These videos that come out and are talking about seed oils this, seed oils that, and you know, even to the point of what's that place called that just recently was in the news? Steak Shake, something like that.
Oh my god!
So not even they will benefit from the fact that they were just on an outlet with RFK Jr. looking like they were healthier than something. I don't know. The problem with this whole like movement is that it's an all or nothing movement with zero nuance and it's all removed. And so now when people enter steak, it was Steak Shake, right? That's what it's called.
Steak and Shake.
Steak and Shake.
Is that what it was? Or
yes, I think it was Steak and Shake. Maybe that's probably right. Either way, it's not in Canada, so we don't have this option. But but yeah. So next time when somebody goes there, they're gonna be like, oh wait, but I'm still eating seed oils because now they don't fry. They fry in tallow, but they're pre-fried and then frozen. And what they're pre-fried in is in a seed oil. So this whole like anti-establishment, anti-seed oil, anti-trust movement, while potentially was rooted in what they thought was good, because it's not rooted in real information from a trusted, verifiable source, it ends up getting skewed very quickly, like a game of shitty telephone.
Also, I just would like to mention that I've gotten so sick and tired of this rumor being spread around because apparently it is so freaking rampant. The eating cholesterol doesn't affect your blood cholesterol is probably the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard in my life. Like, people understand how dietary cholesterol is absorbed, and then like it goes into like there are these little bundles called
Chylomicrons.
Yes, chylomicrons.
Yeah.
Dear Lord, I can't say the word. Chylomicrons. They're absorbed by the chylomicrons with dietary cholesterol, go through your lymphatic system into your circulatory, your bloodstream, and then they get taken up by your muscle and your fat, turn into chylomicron remnants, then they go back into the system, they go through your bloodstream all the way down to LDL cholesterol, which then they are reversed into HDL. But that's like it also depends on genetics. Yes, it does. But dietary cholesterol definitely goes into blood cholesterol. And it
Yeah, I think where that rumor started was that dietary cholesterol is not like, there's not a direct linear relationship between how much dietary cholesterol you consume and how high your serum cholesterol goes, which really quickly got misconstrued. And it was because of, factors like what Ella's talking about, like genetically you could clear it better than someone else, I guess, or, many different factors play a role. Right. But yeah, I think it's really funny how it went from, it's not a linear relationship to now it doesn't affect it at all, dude.
I mean, on top of that, just to your point, it's the same sort of thing with blood sugar in the sense that like if you have an extra piece of candy every day, more than likely after like 3 weeks, your fasting blood glucose is not going to change over the course of that time because your body has regulatory mechanisms, insulin, that can help regulate your
Speak
blood.
for yourself, buddy. All right. Speak for yourself. Wow.
Jeez.
Rough blows straight away. Jeez. No,
But
I'm
it's
kidding.
true.
For anyone that doesn't understand that joke, it's because my body does not produce any insulin. My pancreas has decided to tell me to go fuck myself. Anyways, continuing on.
But either ways, it's kind of a similar sort of comparison in healthy individuals, not such as those who are unlucky enough to have type 1 diabetes or type 2. Yeah. But that being said, eating an extra piece of candy every day is not going to literally, like, the amount of glucose you have in your diet also doesn't literally correlate with your blood glucose levels. So it's like it's the same sort of.
It's a great comparison. Yeah, it's a great comparison. Whereas, you can't just because that's true, it doesn't also mean that eating a literal entire bowl of candy will have no response and you would have no blood glucose response. That would also be incorrect. So
yes.
It's
and especially
called nuance.
if you ate, like, if you just ate bowls of candy all day, 24/7, 5, that probably would have an effect in the same way that eating cholesterol and saturated fat and a lot of other things, just that, only that. Carnivores, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. And no other intake of any other kind of food. Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Now, have you guys heard a lot of the claim out there? And admittedly, I might butcher this, but I'm going to try to tee it up.
Let us have it.
Where it was the reason why the dietary cholesterol raises, your blood cholesterol levels, was because of outdated studies that were on rabbits, and rabbits have a different system. That's why theirs was raised, and it was different than humans. Have you guys heard this out there at all? I've seen this more than once. That's why I'm curious.
If the rabbit, like, if the system was that drastically different, I probably wouldn't be promoting the use of rabbits in my studies because I work in a cardiology lab and we use rabbits. So I probably wouldn't be using them. Just TLDR, I guess.
I do think like the like preliminary research was predominantly in, I'm going to say rodents, just to speak generally.
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
mice?
it was mainly in rodents. But I don't think I think the issue with that is that, and again, I'm not 100% certain to answer your question ahead of time. I'm not 100% certain, but I think the issue is that in human data, we haven't seen a drastic difference from the rodent data. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's generally how we come up with these recommendations.
A lot of the time when it comes to rodent data and animal data is it's looking at a specific mechanism. Whereas like if we're looking at, oh yeah, just this one singular thing and does it cause cancer or does it cause this XYZ disease, that's not usually what you're looking for in rodent data.
Yeah.
And if you are looking for that in rodent data, typically that study is actually not that great.
Yeah.
Great example was that Hofsteth study that I sent you, Joe. It was this one guy, he used these mice that were predisposed for cancer, and then he overfed them Red 40 and basically gave them colon cancer through that, and was like, oh, look at this. Mice that were predisposed for colon cancer got colon cancer.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's
That does happen a fair amount, though. I've been seeing that more and more in the literature, that like someone will send me something, usually a grifter. They'll send me something and I'm like, whoa, like, did you read it like at all? Like, obviously not. Maybe not even the abstract, but yeah, I do see that fairly often where you're like, wow, like, or if it's human data, it'll be like, oh, this group of, my favorite is the diet soda one. That one from, it's like, oh, people that drink diet soda are more likely to become obese. Well, people that drink diet soda, hear me out, might already be obese, and that's why they're, doing it, and so when you ask them those clarification questions, you're like, what the hell, right? Like, they never have an answer, or I look like a jackass either way, I feel like. But I'm used to that. I'm fine. I'm always good to be the butt of the joke. That's fine.
Yeah, I think what do we have that next week, Ella? I think we have just plug for a future recording we're doing where we're actually going through how to read studies. Like that's going to be a whole podcast just to share screen and kind of explain the nuances.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Yeah,
that'll
like how to pull out stuff and say
that would be a really good podcast to have us three on, because I love reading studies, and I think it's really important that people learn, because also I want to make it clear, I'm not dissing rodent data. I work with rodents. I think
it's super important as a starting point too. Yeah.
And we find a lot of really interesting things in rodent data that are translatable. There's things that are translatable, like finding out, for example, I'm pretty sure that the discovery of synthetic insulin was done in dogs.
Yeah, it was dogs. Yeah, you're right.
And Pest, and that was the first time that they discovered synthetic insulin. We wouldn't have gotten there without those dogs. So it's like, animal data has its place. It does have its place, but its place is not connecting a singular dietary thing to a multifactorial, multifaceted disease that is clearly not just caused by that one thing. So it's like, we have to be careful.
Especially, sorry to jump in here, but especially when there's human randomized control trials that prove it wrong.
Yes.
That's the big one. Especially when we have heaps of data in humans that disproves that one mechanistic study in rodents, or those, sure, multiple maybe, but yeah, it's super important. It gives, I always look at it as like the one speed bump, or the one like foundational layer of a pyramid. And you got to just you got to have that foundational layer in terms of rodent data to then go further and to create an ethical study that makes sense, that can pass a board of ethics, and then get funding to work on something in humans and move forward from there.
I will say, to that point on the randomized control trial data, because I know that people are going to probably they're
going to hose me for it.
No, they're going to hose me for it. So
okay.
Randomized controlled trials for nutrition and randomized controlled trials for exercise science are two very different things. When we're talking about exercise science, it's very important to understand that there are far more variables that need to be accounted for when comparing to a highly controlled metabolic ward nutrition intervention in these one group of individuals that are like, they're filtered to like, literally like they're only between this amount of BMI, this gender, or this, like, there's a lot of things that go into nutrition randomized control trials that are not as accounted for in exercise science. And I just had to bring that up because that is a really big problem in kinesiology right now.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I do a little TLDR for everyone listening at home, mechanical tension is what drives hypertrophy, guys. There we go. There we go. There we go.
Not micro tears because somebody did a really crappy histology on muscle.
But it sounded good for a little while. It
did
sounded
sound
really good.
It did.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other one that's out there that was on our list was like this whole thing of, we're talking about money, talking about, marketing buzz and things like that. I think one of the things a lot of people have questions about is like organic, and it's such a broad term, and just curious to have you guys unpack that a little bit. Where's the value there? Is there any value there? What's good? What's not? What's actually worth it? I think
I'm going to put my hand up for this one. Let me jump in first. TLDR before I like jump into a spiel. No, it's not worth. Not bullshit necessarily, but it's to the same effect of grass-fed beef versus grain-finished beef. For the record, and this is something, by the way, people always say, "Oh, Edin, you always think you're self-righteous and whatever." For the record, I'm wrong sometimes. And this was something I was wrong about, and I will put there publicly. I was wrong about the grass-finished and grain-finished cattle. So first of all, and that was mainly because I was listening to so much misinformation, and then I got to work with the NCBA, and they educated me on it. So grass-finished means that throughout its entire life, it ate grass. Grain-finished does not mean that the cow never ate grass. It just means that it only ate grains in the last little while of its life. A little bit of a morbid topic, but that's the difference. And so what's that determined by is similar to the organic conversation in the sense that demand drives this, whether or not something is organic or not. And what I mean by that is farmers don't give a shit. They just want to say what you want to buy. Oh, you'll pay more for it. Fantastic. I'll go and get that. I'll go and get that seed from that person. And for the most part, I'm not speaking for all farmers, but some farmers will, if they have to buy a seed from somewhere, they're buying it from a company, and they get those seeds from somewhere, and they're kind of shit out of luck. They only have one option where they buy their seeds from, maybe one or a handful of options where they can buy their seeds from. So whether or not it's an organic crop and an organic growth strategy, and organic doesn't really mean much, and it's more of a marketing term for buzz. Grass-fed, grain-finished, that has a slight difference in the way that the cattle is brought up, but you end up getting a similar product. It's just that grain-finished happens in a shorter period of time because they can have more control for variables, and therefore, to Ella's point from the beginning of the podcast, it's more environmentally friendly and, perhaps better for the cow as well. But that's to be debated, I guess.
And also, to be on that point of grain finished versus grass fed or grass finished, I guess, even though the fat composition is ever so slightly different, which, yes, it is, it has been found to be statistically significant. And
I'll get into that, but yes.
Yes, I can send over the studies for that if anybody.
No, I've seen them, and I'll get into it with you. Yeah, I know them. Yeah. I know them quite well.
So it has been found to be statistically different. Apparently, that's a word.
Different, yes.
But all that being said, does it matter when we're talking about animal fats specifically? Are we going to truly go for the 80% lean beef when 94% exists, has higher protein, also will come out with less carcinogenic byproducts when we cook it? So then we're talking about something that's slightly more healthful, that is leaner. Does the fat composition matter so much?
To that point, I just want to draw a slight asterisk, and I'll happily review the literature again, but I'm 99.99% sure that that in the literature that you're referring to, it's harvested at the same time, which is not the reality in farmed cattle. So farmed cattle, grain finished, is harvested earlier, meaning that significant difference. That's why I was saying it's also better for the environment and better for the farmer, because they have a faster turnaround time on the cattle. So when it's grain finished, and all my NCBA farmers, if you're still making it to this point, or sorry, ranchers, They don't want to be called farmers. They're ranchers.
Mm.
If they're still listening to this point, they'll be proud of me for remembering this. But it's roughly like a 2 to 3 week difference in terms of turnaround time, sometimes more, obviously, depending on their farm and what's going on. But yeah, they harvest the grain finished earlier than the grass fed its whole life, because it takes them longer to get them fed enough by the good old fashioned way of eating grass and the like roaming and eating grass.
So it's more environmentally friendly. And then on top of that, if you are actually going for the more healthier quote unquote option, it wouldn't be like that difference in the fat composition doesn't matter if you're not trying to go for like really high fat meats.
Yeah, correct. It really would not be, it is significant in the sense of if they were harvested at the same time, but
Mhm.
given different harvest timelines, it's not significant.
Yeah.
Man, I should say, without speaking in absolutes, we have no reason to believe that it is different, or at least statistically significant. So again, that's one of those reading literature and understanding application where I was guilty of that too, right? Like from reading it, you're like, oh, okay. But then you go and meet these guys and you're like, wait a minute, but you're not both harvesting at 10 weeks, or I'm blurring numbers now. I'll have to review that. But let's say the number was 10. You're not both harvesting at 10. This guy's at 8 and you're at 10. Oh, that's going to impact it a little bit too, right?
Yeah.
But in research, you don't really have that much flexibility, right? It's just,
yeah, you have to be more like hyper controlled. And then I guess on top of that, just to put a little more nuance behind that organic argument before,
sure.
Organic pesticides. Why does anybody freaking talk about them? Because apparently for some crops, they are less environmentally friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, they're not like, I've never seen a really well-rounded either narrative review or even just a review in general on organic pesticides. It's like they just don't exist in the literature, which is really surprising. I'm sure there are some regulatory toxicology reports, but I haven't read them, and it's been very difficult for me to find them. I'd love to read them, but that's just what I've seen. So it doesn't seem as though there's a lot of smoke behind those sorts of pesticides, which if you're trying to watch your pesticides, why not go for the GMO version? Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, to your point also, I'd just like to highlight that I've also done that deep dive a few times. And when you do a deep dive and feel like you come out empty-handed, is the best way I would describe it. Is like you're like, there's not really much to give me a definitive answer on whether or not this is truly better or not. And you would think when it has so much yeehaw behind it that there's going to be something definitive, or at least something to get you thinking. I've never found anything to specifically around the topic of environmentally friendly. I've never found anything to suggest that organic is more environmentally friendly.
If anything, the opposite in that one soybean crop study. But
yeah.
Other than that,
I was gonna say I don't remember it being positive. Is all I remember.
And then like if you're really looking at organic pesticides, I was looking at some of them. You don't really know which one they're using, and you also don't know like are they mixing them together? Is mixing them together good or bad?
Yeah. How close is the other neighbor's crops, etc. Yeah. It's a really tough thing to study. I get it. It's tough to gather data, I'm sure, but also
the dose of glyphosate that's on your food is like nothing.
Negligible. Yeah.
It's like how many strawberries are you realistically eating? You're not.
I don't know, but Paul Saladino sells some glyphosate-free honey if you guys are interested.
Oh God.
And apparently it heals wounds in no longer than just like leaving your wound alone. It'll heal in the same rate, but like you could put honey on it. Maybe it just tastes sweeter. I don't know.
Okay, I just have to bring one thing up with Paul Saladino.
I knew I would tweak her on that one. Yeah.
Raw milk, please. Can we talk about raw milk for 2 seconds? Just because it's so fucking bad. I can't stand it.
I love it. I love talking about raw milk and drinking pasteurized milk at the same time.
What do you think about raw milk? I'm curious.
Oh, there is, and I will say this with an absolute, there is no benefit to drinking, no statistically significant benefit to drinking raw milk, with a massive downside. It is, and then I'm always met with the same, well, I was fine. And then I'll ask the question, what do you mean by you were fine? Well, I've been drinking it my whole life. Okay, well, do your parents boil it by chance? Yes. Okay, they pasteurize it. And if they don't, and they're like these guys that are drinking the made for pets raw food, or raw milk, I should say, great. There are also people that rode bikes without helmets. There are also people that drove cars without seatbelts. I think the cars with seatbelts analogy is a fantastic one because, sure, there was a time when there were no seatbelts. There was also a time when there was no pasteurization. Do you want to go back to those times? And if you answer yes, grab a beer and drive on with it. Like finish it off, the full send it, go the whole way. Don't just drink pasteurized milk. Where does it end?
I had this one person in my comment section talking about the whole natural fallacy thing, specifically after when I posted that one video when I was comparing the ingredients list of like chemicals and shit. And one of them was like, yeah, and they feed them antibiotics and all this other. So you do want to go back to the time when we didn't have antibiotics? And they're like, yeah, we can just give our back, like when we get sick, we just have ginger and what was it? It was ginger and some other thing. And I'm like,
lemon and ginger or something.
yeah, I'm like, dude, you want to give yourself like this. There's a bacteria in raw milk called Brucella. It can basically inflame your heart valves and give you heart valve replacements. Do you want to have ginger and lemon when you're getting your heart valves replaced? I mean, I don't think I would personally.
I mean, look, you need the best part about it is they're the first person to go to the doctor. Stereotypically speaking, they're the first person to go to the doctor and ask for antibiotics when they need them, or rather when they don't even need them. But I think my favorite bit about the whole raw milk situation and also that antibiotics, actually, I'll touch on that antibiotics bit a little bit. One of the ranchers, when I was at an event in Denver, with the NCBA, they were talking about this misconception that with regards to beef cattle, that farmers are ranchers are like injecting antibiotics, and that's what makes there's like a huge misconception. The antibiotics are now acting as steroids and making the cows just bigger. And so there's so many mixed ideas that kind of come together in this conspiracy theory, and they actually were very blunt, and they were a good communicator in the sense that it stuck with me, where they just said, think about when you're sick and when do you get antibiotics? You get them when you're sick. Do you take antibiotics when you're not sick? Probably not. So that's the same with a cattle. It's only when they need it. So would you prefer to eat a cattle that was sick? Probably not. And they don't want to give it to you anyways. And then to that point as well, do you want that farmer or that rancher or whatever, with whatever crop it is, do you want them to lose harvest because those animals or the plants or whatever it is that needs it is dying out?
And also,
because that's who loses, right? That's who loses. They already have such small margins. Their business model in the US and in Canada is not bulletproof, unfortunately.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised with the amount of waste that there is too. At least in terms of like supermarkets, there isn't a lot of waste. There isn't a lot of it's not very sustainable the way that things are done. And then on top of that, in the topic of antibiotics specifically, antimicrobial resistance, which is another reason why I don't like it. It's actually the biggest reason why I don't like raw milk and why I'm so adamant against it. You're not just hurting yourself by drinking it. You are potentially hurting another person by giving them an antibiotic resistant bacterial strain if you get sick. And it's like, we grow bacteria in the lab in this warm liquid called LB broth. Guess what raw milk is? It is basically LB broth on steroids. So you're drinking this bacterial like mixture of just antibiotic resistance genes. And just newsflash, bacteria don't procreate like we do. They slip genes to their friends. So when you have like this warm substance where a lot of bacteria are, they can easily slip those genes to their friends. And it spreads a lot of antibiotic resistance. People who drink raw milk are inadvertently spreading antibiotic resistance by drinking it, potentially getting sick with that antibiotic resistant bacteria, And then
Yeah.
if you get sick, now you're passing on something that kills millions of people every year. So it's like, that's just the reason I want to bring that up, because it's so.
Yeah. No,
We're gonna
it's good. Yeah, go ahead.
We're
Sorry.
going to use this opportunity to take a short break to thank our sponsors, Raw Milk USA, for providing sponsorship to fund today's podcast. Thank you so much. Now back to the show.
So good. So natural.
Right on the heels of just bashing it for 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, in fairness too, like this, it's not I think, I also, another response I get frequently is, oh, soy boy, this and that. I'm like, I literally work with the NCBA and the Dairy Farmers of Canada and America. So awkward. But for what it's worth, I'm never bashing. Like, I think milk and milk products are fantastic.
Oh yeah.
If you're a vegan or whatever and you choose to not eat them, that's great. That's fine. That's your prerogative. Just know that I do choose to eat them because I enjoy them and I think they're great source of protein, convenient, deeply rooted in my culture, etc. So for me, it makes sense. For other people, maybe not so much, but that's okay. It doesn't mean that I'm shitting on it. It doesn't mean that I'm a soy boy. But if that means that I'm a soy boy, then throw it up on the wall. I'm a certified soy boy.
And I like tempeh and tofu. And just because I'm not vegan doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. So it's all
Listen,
about.
I was told, I got a bone to pick with you on that one. I was told that by eating more soy, I'd grow bigger tits. That never happened. So I'd like a refund.
I mean, theoretically, if isoflavones and soy could bind really well to the estrogen receptor, it actually wouldn't cause a decrease in testosterone. It would cause an increase because
Yes.
you're binding to the estrogen receptor with something that isn't estrogen.
Mhm.
So
yeah, the whole thing falls apart quickly.
yeah.
Really quickly, like most of these fallacies, but gotta love them. It gives us a job.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
It quite literally, I get to yap for a living.
yeah, that's fun.
So it's
I mean,
great.
it's not for my living because I don't get paid from Instagram, unfortunately. But
Me neither, by the way, for the record, me neither. But these partnerships with the agricultural industry wouldn't exist if I didn't yap for a living. So yap for a living, yap for free.
How did you get those partnerships? Because I would love them. I'm currently.
I'll have my people talk to your people.
I'll
have my people talk to your people. But yeah, they're no, I love dairy, especially Dairy Farmers of America. Shout out, love you.
So what does that look like when you work with them? Is it like research related? Is it like
so for some of the partnerships, yeah, it's a little bit of research related, market research related. Some of the partnerships are just kind of as simple as helping them grow their social media presence, as simple as trying to help them on social media to communicate what they've been trying to communicate in the best possible way. And then other times it's like, hey, we're launching this new product, which is happening in a couple of days. Actually, you guys won't see, it'll be up by the time you guys see this. They launched a new product in the US called Milk 50. And so it's helping people see this product, which is 50 calories per cup with the same amount of protein and lactose free. And so they, shout out science. With the help of science, they were able to not only just add lactase enzymes to make it digestible, they actually were able to remove lactose. And so reducing the total, the total energy demands or the total calories in the actual milk and keeping it skim. And then you're left with a lower calorie product with the same amount of protein. So all the positives without the negatives. That was a big sales plug, but no, yeah. So then trying to help educate people on that, which is what I tend to do apparently pretty well. And so, yeah, you can form partnerships with people like that. And I think for me, those are partnerships that I'm more than happy to take on because I'm just teaching people what I would have taught them for free. So those are the ones that organically make the most sense. And I don't feel like I'm peddling some supplement that is like a $70 fiber detox supplement.
And it's better because it's organic, right? Anything that's organic is better. So
of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's worth the 250% markup.
Oh, yeah, all natural. All natural.
Yes, all natural, just like cyanide.
Yes. Yes.
But I guess on the topic of lactose, just to make sure this is 100% clear, it is biochemically impossible for raw milk to not contain lactose. Because
Wait, what? I thought it cures lactose intolerance. What are you talking? Are you saying that guy on Instagram lied to me?
yes, because if raw milk contained lactase enzymes, that raw milk would literally lactose intolerance would not exist. Like it just wouldn't exist.
Yeah, it's like it just in general, it would never have ever been an issue. But apparently the dairy farmers planted that. So sorry guys, if you are still listening to this, you guys did this. It's all your fault. You did this as a ploy to sell more products, even though that would actually hurt your end goal. But yeah.
Greek yogurt is fantastic. Sponsored
Yeah.
by Greek yogurt. I love Greek yogurt. It's such a good source of protein.
Oh, fantastic. Or cottage cheese. I'm a big cottage cheese guy.
So,
Shout out to Leo. He is a buddy of mine. His Instagram is a little bit more complicated, but his TikTok started as cottage cheese connoisseur. I think he changed it to like his name. And I know he's like moving away from that a little bit, but he has, if you're interested in learning how to use cottage cheese into any form of baking or anything, this guy has like hundreds of recipes on his page and he's always uploading them on Instagram and TikTok. So if you just type in cottage cheese connoisseur on TikTok, you'll find it for sure. And on Instagram, I don't remember what it is, but
cottage cheese is amazing. I love cottage cheese.
Yeah, also an absolute incredible source, which is a milk product as well. Which kind of does make me, it begs the question again, we're talking about this. One common theme that we see in misinformation is it's really easy to pull apart with like really quite common sense, but critical thinking questions. But the biggest one is like when it sounds too good to be true. If you ask 2 or 3 questions and by 2 or 3 questions, it sounds too good to be true, I think you can pretty much entirely rule out that is a conspiracy theory. So in the case of raw milk, you know, when somebody starts saying, oh, it cured my lactose intolerance, well, right away you would have to, like most people, if they're lactose intolerant, you know, maybe they don't know what lactose intolerance means, but they know there is something in milk that makes them, you know, feel like garbage. So you would right away ask, oh, well, it doesn't have that thing that milk normally has to make, you know, to turn my stomach into a motor, you know? And so if they asked that, the person would probably come up with some mumbo jumbo answer. And then you would say, okay, next question, by the second question, which is just, oh, how do they do that? Yeah. Oh, they just don't heat it up. What? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't remove anything, right? So right away, when it doesn't make logical sense, I forget what they call that. They call that something's razor, where it's like just if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is too good to be true.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called.
Sounds, yeah.
I think it's like
very familiar.
Yeah. Anyways, I think it's a psychology concept, but the idea, pretty, you know, in layman's terms, the idea that something that sounds too good to be true, especially if you ask 1 or 2 questions and you're not really getting straightforward answers, it's usually, I think it's called Occam's razor, where it can kind of cut through. I'm pretty sure it's that, where it can cut through the bullshit. But
that sounds very, very familiar.
I had to cheat. Occam's razor.
Occam's razor.
Yeah.
So close.
It was on the tip of my tongue too. I
just wanted to remind the viewers that English is my second language. I fucking nailed it.
Right there.
Yeah.
Any other topics out there? Anything we covered that you guys feel like maybe we moved on too quickly for? Anything?
Honestly, I don't feel like there's. I mean,
well, I would ask, like, what are some more red flags? Like, what do you think are some more red flags that are, like, at least in today's day and age with social media specific? Like that, what I said is obviously not specific to social media at all. It's just in general concepts in life. Sure. But I'm curious if there's anything, any trends that you've seen or anything where you're like, damn, I wonder if that's legitimate. Because I guess the interesting thing about social media is like our algorithms probably look really different. And it's all based on what we enjoy to watch. So for example, I like to watch tennis stuff and car stuff and watch stuff. So I get a lot of that I actually don't get a lot of nutrition content, believe it or not.
Me neither. I get a lot of organic chemistry, biochem jokes, a lot of biochem jokes. Too many biochem jokes. I got this one. Oh my god, it's so funny. So for those who are interested in biology, if you know, RNA has it's uracil instead of adenine. So it was like DNA equals A for the poly A tail.
Oh, it was the singing one, right? Yeah. That one was a good one. That was a good one. It actually, that one took me a second. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, right. Took me I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I like messaged you about it. I was like, that's good. I like that.
I get way too many of those. I get too many biochem jokes, a lot of organic chem jokes. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Now, selfishly, and maybe for the viewers at home, this might be interesting, but selfishly for me, I'm curious, and Joe, please feel free to jump in on this, but I'm curious first towards Ella and then Joe, your take on this. But what is the main driver for what you do? And I'll give you multiple choice options here. Is it, and by when I say what do you do when you are, for example, correcting videos, is it, I want people to notice me and I like attention? Is it, and it could be some combination of the above examples here. Is it, I want to be right and I just need to be right? Or is it, I just hate watching people say the wrong thing and I just want the right thing to be out there and see whether or not people jump on it? What is your, and it could be outside of those examples, but what's your kind of reason for why you make the videos that you make? Specifically the ones that I've seen you make, right? I mean, or do you just like teaching people concepts because you like biochem?
When I first started, I was making content because I just kind of got into it. Somebody was like, oh yeah, you should make a video and post it on TikTok. I'm like, sure. So I started reviewing like pre-workout labels, and that's how I originally started. Then I started seeing a lot of wrong information. So I guess it would be your third point there, where it was like I saw a lot of wrong stuff and I wanted to put the right thing out there because I was seeing so many people say, and I remember specifically, it was this one claim on TikTok. It was, the vegan diet cures cancer. And that got on my nerves because I was a really close person to me was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer that year and was struggling really hard with it. So I was just sitting there like, and just like, I guess TLDR, but a lot of people that I know who are in my family, they're very naturally type people.
Yeah,
So
same here, by the way.
I've dealt with a lot of the, oh yeah, just have this special root and you'll be cured. I've heard that a lot in my life, and it really pisses me off when I see somebody who's struggling with a very real, very morbid disease being told, oh yeah, if you take this one little pill, it's going to cure you. So that's the biggest reason why I started. And then after a while, I got into learning, and I really loved learning things. I just loved learning genetics. I loved learning. I took organic chemistry in my last year of college, not because I had to, because it was not required for a kinesiology degree. I took it because I wanted to, and then I fell in love with it, and then I loved it. So it's
criminal behavior, by the way, absolutely criminal.
I love epoxide reactions. So if anybody ever has a question,
that's so funny.
I'm like obsessed with epoxide reactions. I think they're so cool.
That is incredible. I wish, Joe, I would love to know what makes you tick. What makes you do the things that you do?
Yeah,
was it for that one interaction that one guy was like, "Hey, yo, you talking to my girl?"
That's exactly it. Hit the nail on the head. No, I think you know, the podcast specifically is like the main kind of thing that I'm trying to get good long form discussions going out there to help work through the nuances. I'm not anywhere near as creative as you guys are with content and things of that nature, and it's I know enough to be
different creative. It's
there
different.
Different. Yeah. Okay, I'll take that. I think the kids tell me it's cringe, I guess, is my content is
Oh,
cringe.
you're definitely not cringe, dude. Oh man, I was so cringe today. If you guys are looking for cringe, look at my Goob video. Jesus Christ. Yeah,
No,
that's
I
cringe.
mean,
I liked your Goo video. I don't know.
it was basically like I know enough to be dangerous about a lot of topics, and so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I'd love to have these conversations, and I can play the
Devil's
audience
advocate.
member and just try
Yeah.
to ask questions that maybe people are thinking out there that I've heard, and try to provide someone like the two of you some more specifics and examples and such, and so going back to like it was a while ago, but when I was in college, like it was just beating to our head about like citations, references, and mind you, Facebook was newer, so
Yeah.
that was like my phase was like on the heels of MySpace. So
I
it
love
just would drive me
MySpace, by the
nuts.
way.
Yeah, there you go. We need to bring
R.I.P.
it back.
Tom. I don't know if he's still around, but
We got to bring
Tom.
it back.
Yeah.
But no, I would see a lot of people creating content, and so I start, it, I think it just bothered me because it was all the work that I put in making sure cross my T's, dot my I's, making sure what I'm saying, and citations, etc. And so that kind of stuck out to where I was like, okay, I want to create uh, an environment where people can talk about these things, but then also have proof. So even, any blog posts or things we do, it's like we always put the citations in there and tell people, don't believe me, like read it.
Yeah.
If you read it and it's different, please send me a message and tell me why it's different, like why you think it's different. And that's a big key, because there's just we've already talked about several examples, but there's so many people out there that frankly I don't know them, I don't know their intentions, but I'm like, one of them was I remember I was trying to really genuinely help somebody. I was doing a consulting job, and they kept repeating, we're evidence-based, we're evidence-based, we're evidence-based. And I'm like, what you're doing is off-label prescribing. I was like, there's really not, that means by definition, there's not like a lot of, it's not an intended use. It's not a lot of evidence behind that. I was like, and then this one, all the evidence is in rodent studies. So like, what are we using to determine evidence-based? Let's just make sure we are using the same word before we go out and put that out publicly to represent, the organization and what we're doing.
Working behind. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just, it was kind of, whatever it is, just what is the criteria and why are we saying this? And I just seen a lot of people that would just say things and then that, which is fine, right? Like people are gonna say what they're gonna say, they're gonna do it. Where it kind of started to bleed through is just from prior things I've done. People would like ask me, or at the gym, or shoot me a message or whatever, and say, hey, is this true? Is this that? And I'm like, I don't even have the time to unpack this to explain why it's not, because it might not be like my full-time thing that I'm kind of going down. So I think there's a lot of people out there who need help. They want help. I want them to know there is a path there. There's a way to do it where you can afford it. You can do it. And there's a lot of solutions out there, and kind of help them navigate through that without like, the buzz, the $300 thingamajig that you need that, improves this and that by 0.02%. I'm like, so I think that's kind of more, what I enjoy. And plus I'm just a nerd at heart, where I just love to hear people that are, more in the weeds than me kind of break stuff down. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So I mean, I was a pain in the butt even in class, because we were, I in school was
You asked questions, didn't you? For sure.
Oh no. Well, when the researchers, a lot of classes we took, it was current research based. There was like a lot of like research facilities and such like on the grounds. And so they would come in and present it. And I would be the one in the front always asking that little question that they hope no one asks. I was a pain in the ass that said, well, didn't the control group had this? And I was genuinely just curious. I wasn't trying to be a jerk. And they would just look at me and start getting red slowly as the whole class is like, yeah, what about that? So
yeah, they're like, let's move past that. Next question.
Wait a minute. Who funded this? Wait. Hold on a second. Let's back this up a little. So.
But the questions that people need to be asking, and you actually made a really interesting point that I'd like to point out there. And I don't normally do this, but I think I can with one hand pat all three of us on the back here. Is that comment you made about I don't have the time to dive into this? I only know this looking back now. At the time, I was fueled by the rage of misinformation, and I've gone into podcasts in the past before, but similar to Ella's example, I dealt with a lot of pseudoscience around my own illness, and so that alone fueled me into nutrition, which fueled me, like the rage of that. I know that sounds so fucked up, but the rage of that fueled me into nutrition, which fueled me into getting my degree and not really falling in love with dietetics itself. So full disclosure, I'm not a registered dietitian because I decided that that didn't feel like it was for me, but I still loved nutrition and decided to start making posts online. And what's funny is it wasn't until my brother told me to start making like videos on TikTok and on Instagram. I was like trying to do the old, I just watched what other people were doing. It was take a picture, recipe, this, that. And I didn't love it.
Sure.
But what would get me fired up and talking is in person was like, oh, I hate this. This guy gets away with it and is like wiping his ass with money. And it's like, I'm okay with you wiping your ass with money, but as long as the product is good, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you can hate them all you want, but they can wipe their ass with money. I don't care. Amazon, him too, because they created something that was just such a wow service. Now we can get into the ethics and morality about other certain things later, but the fact of the matter is, like, they saw a niche, they solved a problem, they found a problem, they solved a problem. Perfect. In the case of supplements, which is why supplements is one of my deepest rooted targets, I guess, is they're largely unmoderated in any capacity, really. And so when there's no regulation, they can say whatever they want. They still kind of try to make it sound like it could be legitimate. It's just for that person who like took one science class and like paid kind of attention, so they don't call them out. But then when it's someone like me who will, again, back to that original point, take 3 hours out of his day to compile a laundry list of literature to just post up in a video, that was why I started doing it, is because I knew at the time, I didn't know that it was like a possibility for me to grow an audience. And in fairness, I haven't grown an audience until fairly recently, but I was, and because of that, I can confirm I've been for 5 years making videos with no follow. I think 5 years ago, I had like 1,000 followers on Instagram, if even. 4 years ago, same thing, like 1,500. And 3 years ago, it wasn't until like 2 years ago that I cracked above 10K. So, and I love every single one of my followers, don't get me wrong, but that's not something to write home to mom about. That's not going to, pay the bills, even if I did get paid for views, which I don't, from any platform. So the thing for me is just like, I'm so fueled by, I see my parents in that Chinese medicine office that they were convinced to pay for this procedure week in and week out because it will cure my diabetes. When we don't know, it's different for everybody. Okay. And what can go wrong? Oh, nothing can go wrong. Okay. But the reality in that is it's not, nothing can go wrong. And so I always think of those people as my parents. That's the, in marketing, they say, choose your audience, choose your person. Who are you talking to? And that is my person. That person is my mom and dad 10 years ago when they were trying to cure my diabetes, more than 10 years ago now, but I digress. They're trying to cure my diabetes and instead fell into a trap of, well, what could hurt? Well, let me tell you what could hurt. Thousands of dollars, lots of time wasted, missed opportunities for memories, trauma for me now, because you can go listen to other podcasts for what I used to have to do for that. It was brutal. And just, that's just a few things, just to name a few, right? There is always a trade-off, even if it seems harmless. And a lot of these products are like that, right? You actually made a point, Joe, that I love. You said this $300 product that might make a 0.2, 0.3% difference. Sure, BCAAs might, they won't, but like they might make a 0.001% increase of your muscle mass. Like, that's not significant at all, right? And you're still going to spend shitloads of money on it. There is something to lose, even if you don't have any budget, which, by the way, anyone that says that is lying. Everybody has a budget,
also,
even my wealthiest friends.
Full disclosure, I own a supplement company, and I still don't. I hate most other supplements out there. Like, I was actually talking to Jackson not too long ago because he was like, okay, pre-workout is so 2019 or whatnot. We need to find a new supplement. I'm like sitting there like, what other supplement? Most supplements are complete bullshit. So like, if I'm going to promote something, you bet your bottom dollar it better be freaking creatine, because that's like the only other
I was just about to say, what are you going to do? Creatine, but you can't do it any differently. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
there's
yeah.
literally not many supplements that are actually good.
And I've consulted for supplement companies, by the way. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
And one of my good friends owns a supplement company as well. That's not Ella that I'm talking about, but also Ella owns a supplement company. But yeah, like, and by the way, I'm sure you didn't get offended by what I had to say because
No,
I
I did
know
not.
I'm not talking
I
about
have
you.
the
But
same opinion. I don't think
yeah,
like it. To be totally honest, when it comes to pre-workout, my specific pre-workout, I threw in a bunch of shit in there that I thought was going to be okay at the time. I'm actually taking ingredients out now as we speak with my next round and my next batch because I'm trying to go more minimalistic, making it more affordable.
no beta alanine, eh? All right.
Well, oh, I never put in beta alanine to begin with.
Wow. Okay.
I actually always thought that beta alanine was bullshit, and there's this one really crusty old dude who got really pissed off at me for that.
I mean, for the record, it's not bullshit, but within context, it kind of is. You would really have to take it every single day.
Well,
Which
within
most
context
people
of
wouldn't do.
resistance training, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So there has been some randomized controlled trials with beta alanine specifically showing that there's actually, I believe there was one study specifically that was either as like no significant difference or even it was slightly worse taking beta alanine, which is kind of surprising, but also not surprising when you think about the fact that resistance training is not mainly glycolytic, but mainly reliant on the phosphate system.
Yeah.
So, like, when we're talking about like what does beta alanine do, if it helps you with glycolytic, like the glycolytic,
Glycolytic.
if it helps you with glycolysis and
Yeah.
it helps you with that specific energy system, but it doesn't help you with the phosphate system, what is it really doing?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
And mind you, any of the research where for people that want more context on what we're talking about, most of the research that does show any significant benefit is at doses of 4 to 6 grams, which none of you are taking,
Mhm.
because 4 to 6 grams is painfully high. And I say that as someone who's done a lot of R&D in supplements. It is like when people are like, oh my God, it makes my skin itch. Nah, dude, like imagine a human child under your skin. That's what it feels like with 6 grams. It's crazy.
oh God.
No, it
Yeah.
was admittedly I'm a little rusty on it, but I was in the supplement business for a while, and
Mhm,
my partner did a great job of formulation.
mhm.
But one of the hardest things to sell it was cost because he was
Yeah.
not going to put he had his own, he still does, has his own coaching brand. So he's like, I can't put my name on it unless it's something I would personally take. And then secondary, the volume people had to take to
Yeah.
actually be effective. Like people
Yeah.
like, I gotta take 7 of these, I gotta take 9 of these. It's like, so it was like this constant battle that I know he rebranded it under his coaching business. And I believe he's been narrowing it down to the most effective products, the most,
Yeah.
dare I say, friendly products that like people will use, and there's some value there, and still try to find that price point. But it was, yeah, it was tough because you would see some far superior or sub, value product, if you will. Like I know they're paying $9 for that bottle and they're selling it for 50 and they're spending 40 on advertising. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Their marketing spend is high. Yeah.
yeah, and then you're spending high 20s or mid 20s because you want good quality ingredients or whatever the number is, right? And you're trying to grow, and you're like, so like I said, I think the enjoyment part was like educating people on the difference, and then as I said earlier, like, hey, these are the citations, this is the reason why. But the reality is like the scale on that, unless it was like in his case where he has a coaching brand and people trust him as a coach, it was a better situation for him to buy me out, and we were split. And just, I went kind of back to the medical field more, where I've came from before that, and was like, okay, like, do your deal. But so it was a little bit better from a business sense standpoint, but it was, very, very specific products he makes for very, very specific clientele that are willing to
Yeah.
take the 7 pills a day, not the general population.
To your point, Joe, there's also, if you've which you're probably more experienced in it than I am as well. So and I think this is valuable insight when starting a supplement company. Obviously I don't think any person starts a supplement company to be like, I want to give people dog shit. So
Right.
when you start when you start a supplement company, you start it with the hopes of, yes, I want to create the best product. I think where most people get lost, as you mentioned, is that cost. They're like, yeah, they're gung ho. I'm going to make the greatest product. Then all of a sudden they get slapped in the face with how much it costs and how little margin it is if it is an effective product. But one like minutia detail that like when you get focus groups involved is quite interesting that I underestimated. I understand now, but I completely underestimated at the time of the first first supplement company collaboration, which I still can't talk about, but it was people's, and it was a pre-workout, and they didn't want to have a scoop of a certain size. Like the scoop size bothered people enough to not want to take it. But then the product has to be like, to be effective dose, then you have to start writing 2, 3, 4x. And then people are maybe not taking the effective dose because they don't read the label. They just take one scoop and I'm good, whatever. And so now you've got that discrepancy of like, now you're unintentionally giving someone an ineffective product because you need to make sure that like people are turned off from a pre-workout scoop being the same size as a protein scoop. Like it was that, right? It was that conversation, which was something that I'd never thought about, but it was so interesting to get that feedback from people. They're like, oh, I have to take that. Oh, that can't be good for you, which was pretty much the consensus.
You know what's really funny? I actually use that as like a marketing thing for me, which is both of the scoop sizes on my product are effective. So like if you're a smaller person and you want less caffeine, take one scoop. If you're larger and you can handle more, take two. But
mind you, this has a lot of pump products. This one had a ton of pump products, so like
mine does too. And it's like it is a pretty big scoop. It's like I want to say it's a little less than maybe like a
10 gram.
It's like it's a little more than a tablespoon.
Okay, so like a 20 gram.
Yeah, it's pretty good in terms of like the size. But like it's a white chocolate raspberry flavor and it tastes really good. Yeah, sure. But like if somebody wants to take less, I'm not opposed to that. And I think that that's something that people in supplement companies could use to the advantage of like, oh yeah, people are different sizes. You can make it so that way people can take it. That being said, I think it's like I got slapped with the $23 per unit thing. I don't mind. I'd rather take the low margins than the bullshit
product. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and you know, to your point, I can appreciate that, but I think it's also important to hear that as a consumer, just because then people have a better understanding. Because I think when you start a supplement company, or when somebody owns a supplement company, or even somebody that has just now found out, oh, Ella's got a supplement company, they're going, Ella's rolling in it. When the reality is, the reality is the same as like, you know, the farmers or whatever. Like people are like, oh, they're getting government support. What do they need government support for? And I'm like, because they literally would not be able to survive without it. And same thing here is like, you're not making, you know, obviously you have a potential to make money, sure, but having a $20 or let's say a 40% margin on a product that's not that expensive, or a 30% margin on a product that's not that expensive, the amount of volume you have to move is insane to make a meaningful amount of money, first for yourself, and then two, to pay everyone a meaningful amount to grow and scale, yada, yada, yada. Joe's an expert on this, but for that, I think people don't understand that. And for that reason, because there's not a lot of transparency on it, that builds this distrust, because what you can't see or can't understand, you don't trust, and if you don't understand it, it must be just like, I don't know, gone in the wind. So anyway, that's my hot take on that. I think supplements have their place, but it's back to the rooted definition of the word. It's supplementing your diet.
It's actually one of the things that we offer. One of the services is, it's included in kind of our services, is we call it like a personal shopper thing, where they'll basically help them sift through, or we'll do free intakes on their supplements. It's like, we're not telling you a specific brand, we're just trying to educate you on what to read and look at. Or we'll shop from like the bigger companies, if you will, that have the more reputable credentials. And
Yeah, third-party tested brands.
Exactly. But the actual like real third-party tested versus like,
yes.
trust me, I'm a manufacturer. We did third-party testing. My cousin Bob, tested it. It's like,
yeah, who is it that recently got slammed in that? There's a company. Do you guys know? I saw it maybe like 2 months ago, a month or two ago. It was somebody got slammed for that. They're like, they're third-party tested, but the reality was they were third-party tested, but it was kind of like that. It was like my cousin Bob is testing it, who is not a party of the brand. Like it wasn't a third-party lab tested. It was
yeah, we got a little bit financially a rude awakening in a way where when we went on Amazon, they just changed their policy with their testing and they only would use very specific testing facility. We're like, well, we have these, this paperwork, like, don't care. And we did the math on how many bottles we had to sell after, ads, all the other Amazon fees. And then it was like $3,300 a year or something, the testing we had to do, which seems small, but if it's eating up a couple bucks a bottle, it's like, anyways. So yeah,
with products with overhead, it's tough.
Yeah, it's an interesting game, but hey, if people can break through and they have a good ethical quality product, then more power to you. Like, that's awesome.
Agreed.
So, because we need them out there, because
there's
we need them, and there were a lot that were pulled off. So I did like that, to where if we were going to stay together, like I was trying to work on a path to be more. My partner was more into strength sports, really respected in the bodybuilding powerlifting community, so he made a lot of those products. But I was trying to take those; they were helping people, and I was like, let's try to go mass market. But then like we met with Walmart, or I met and did the whole deal, went through like a couple steps, and it was something like the amount of berberine was like, to get to their price point was gonna be like 150 milligrams or something. We're like, no, sorry, we can't like even get close. Like our product was like $55, and it was like, theirs was, they wanted us like south of 20, and they're like, well, you got to think of the person walking down the diabetic aisle at Walmart. Like they're not going to know why your product and why it's superior.
Well, Walmart's an interesting one that I've only had a handful. Walmart and Costco are those interesting ones that are just like they kind of bully you because they can, and the volume you have to provide is insane, and the amount of sales already that you have to get in there is like crazy. So unless you're VC backed, anyway, that's a whole story for another day. Unless you're like massively VC backed and have a huge runway, It's almost impossible to make that stuff work. But all the power to whoever can do it. It's just not for me, I don't think.
Good stuff. Any other talking points or anything? We covered a lot of ground tonight, so appreciate you guys definitely jumping on. So it was awesome stuff.
Yes. Sorry for bleeding everyone's ears out and boring them to death with science, but hopefully somebody would scratch their itch today.
I love anything talking about science. And I guess even though like I started off like with the kind of anger that you had, it was like mainly I ended up getting into it, and now I love everything about physiology. Everything about the human body. So that's
in fairness, I've always been, to touch on that, I've always been someone who, yes, anger is like the main fuel source, but it doesn't fuel me anymore. It's just that I was always like growing up, I taught tennis, and it wasn't a very tennis is a sport where you're like, oh man, it's an expensive sport. Like, whoa. I didn't grow up with money, for context. So for anyone, if we keep this in or if we don't edit this out, I didn't grow up with money, and I worked for everything. I learned how to string rackets in tennis because I was breaking too many strings, one, and two, I ended up making money to fund my ability to continue to train. So I also worked at
the rack of the machine to restring them and all that.
Restring, 100%.
I used to be
I need to get a new one, but anyway, I've been using one at my club. Anyway, I digress. It's fine. But I also ran a tennis summer camp for kids. Shout out to my dad because he started that for me to have a place to play as a kid. Nice. And so, we really roundabout, interesting way of like getting me more court time. And so obviously I outgrew that. When I outgrew that, I started working there and to make more coin, of course, and just to fuel the rest of the things. Again, I didn't come from money, like I said. So it was though through that I realized I have a solid amount of patience and I'm a pretty good teacher. So I never wanted to become a teacher in the literal sense. Shout out to everyone that is a teacher. You guys are underappreciated in both of our countries.
Mhm.
But and underpaid and underpaid. I'll say
Mhm.
that for sure. But I never wanted to do that, but I find it very cathartic when you can see that light bulb in, like, you like speaking about the raw science, and I definitely like getting into the weeds of like certain parts of chemistry and digestive chemistry, or any form of the digestive tract kind of thing, and educating people. Oh, this is how this works, or this is how, fiber is also a fuel source in the intestine, right? So I I like getting into that with people, but my favorite bit truly, and it's a little bit of like a cliche perhaps, is like when you see across from you that person you're talking to has that light bulb
Yeah.
moment that they're like, oh, that actually does make sense.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, cool, worth it. Like, and,
Yep.
and again, remember, I did this for free. Only this year did I start making like a reasonable amount of brand deals or whatever through Instagram. And again, I'm happy to talk about it openly. I only do it with brands that I make sense, that are like educational type things,
Sure.
and that have no conflict of interest per se. Um, Although I would argue that everything has a conflict of interest, but I don't make money off this. I literally never have, and it's always been the thing in my life that people have asked me, Edin, why do you keep doing this? Ed, why do you keep doing this? Because you're wasting your life. I don't have many friends. I don't go out. I don't drink. I don't do anything. I don't have a big social life. And it's like, I'll be teaching people something for free and not making any money on it. And everyone knows I'm not making money on it, but I still continue to do it and waste full-time job amount of hours per week. So it started rooted in anger, but it's almost like a challenge,
Yeah.
almost autistic like challenge to make someone like really like learn something, or make them laugh. And those are two things I really like doing and combining. So yeah, I just wanted to
Very
add a little
entertaining. Very
nuance
entertaining.
to
A lot of
that.
the stuff. I mean, it's definitely entertaining for sure.
I also just wanted to add
And
on.
educational.
I deliberately chose the program that was going to. So basically, there's two kinds of graduate programs you can go for. You can go for the fully funded ones that you don't really need to work for. It's fully funded. And then the other ones, which are teacher assistant funded. I
Mhm.
found a PI who I love the research of. It's like my dream research topic. Putting that aside,
The cachexia one,
yep,
right?
text.
Yeah.
Putting that aside, though, the other reason why I chose that program is because I'd have to TA to keep my funding. And
Mhm.
I love the idea of teaching people. I think it's so fun. My favorite DMs are the people who come up and are like, hey, thank you for teaching me this. I learned
Yeah.
something new. And it's
Yeah.
so cool. So, yeah.
Ella's the new Khan Academy now.
I hope.
People, the
I
new age Khan Academy.
No,
That's
but I'm with you guys on that. Like when you can explain something to somebody or use like a parallel, you know it so well, you can use a relatable analogy to break it down, and then it clicks. It's just like,
Yeah.
and a lot of mine has been more recently. I would say has been more. How do I say it? Like medical slash compound based, where someone will say, hey, I'm thinking about taking this or that. I'm like, no, no, no. Back that up. Don't know.
Reminding people how like not counter, but like when something counteracts
Right.
the medical use of something else, and you're like, maybe don't do that, maybe don't have grapefruit juice with this medication, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, best of intentions, right? They watch somebody who created something about, did you know you have to have this with this? And I'm like, huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That one felt real. See, that whole relatable examples, that was a relatable example. You're just sitting like holding yourself back. God damn it. You can just
yeah.
see the like vein in my forehead's popping out.
Well, and I think it's like helping people is definitely impactful, but then in I'm sure you guys have had these experiences, but those layers where people literally like when I was really young in the kind of general fitness health industry, I was so stoic. I just was like, Yeah, I don't care. Like, what do you mean? Like, the lady who went on her first date at 27 years old because she dropped 100 pounds, working with me, and I changed her life. And I'm like, okay, you ready? Like, we're going to start our session now or whatever. Like, I was just like, what? I was just, I just didn't realize that. But now, you're talking to somebody who's been struggling with something for so long, and you start to unpack it. It's not easy. It's not like, oh, we got the solution right here. Just drink raw milk and put some honey on it, right? Like, no,
I mean, that would definitely help you lose some quick weight for sure.
that would move the needle. So I think I need to change my approach after this podcast. But
yeah, that's the take home from this whole podcast.
No,
but to your point, delayed gratification, but it's nice.
Losing your heart as an organ, that definitely loses some pounds. But
I mean, you'd save some massive amounts of money. Maybe not for you. Like in the U.S., the medical bills for your family that you leave behind would be kind of crazy. But hey, but you'd save on something. You wouldn't have lactose intolerance as a problem.
Yeah, I mean, not being alive has
it's starting to sound pretty good right now, isn't it?
So we're gonna take probiotics, drink raw milk, put honey on our wounds. And
this has been brought to you by Home Depot, where you can buy. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Terrible dark joke. I'm just kidding. But I do, back to what we were talking about earlier. I do appreciate you guys having me out for a chat. It was really fun for me because I get to shoot the breeze where I don't feel like I'm going to get judged. And if I do get judged, it's because I deserved it because I said something stupid. So it's called accountability, Goob. Anyways.
Sorry, that's so funny. Oh my god. Oh
yeah, no, but yeah, I appreciate it. So if you guys are talking literature, I love asking those questions that Joe asks at the front of the room. I was actually from the back of the room, which made it worse. I think I just seemed like the douchebag at the back of the room, but I was in dietetics. It was all women, so I got there late. It is what it is.
I mean, someone told me to get better grades and sit in the front, so I just sat in the front. That's how plain my brain works. No.
Yeah.
I was the annoying one asking when the homework was due. So sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Oh, damn it.
So we were all in the class.
Yeah.
We were all in the class. I was in the front. You're in the middle asking about homework, and you're in the back. So I got it.
Exactly.
I'm picturing it perfectly now. Yeah. And I was only in the front selfishly because I just was told that I would get better grades from in the front. So
did it work?
It did.
Oh, nice.
It's harder to drift. It was harder to drift, I will say.
Yeah.
But, so
yeah, it was definitely really, really easy to drift.
It also kept me entertaining when my morbidly, I'm going to judge, but my morbidly obese professor is talking about dietetics and he's completely wrong or whatever. It's just like something wrong here. But anyways,
you know what? I will. Wow, this is a terrible time for a segue, but I will shout out to my professor Nick Bellissimo if he's ever watching. He is not morbidly obese, by the way. That is not the segue I was trying to make. But he is the one that got me critical thinking on research. And he actually came to mind at the very beginning of the podcast when Ella, I'm pretty sure he's been sent a lot of Ella's videos. But yeah, he doesn't really do socials so much. But I gave him a shout out on one of my posts earlier and he did see that. And it just kind of reminded me, is like, yeah, those like reading literature and like asking critical questions, like, is this really applicable? Does this really make sense? What is like a good study? What study can help? What actual study findings can help us understand? And how can we move forward from there? Because ultimately that is the goal for scientific research.
Right.
It's what can we do from here to learn from here? That's my hot take. And you can roast me if you want, Ella, but she looks ready.
I think it's really good that we have more people trying to do critical thinking, and I'm excited for that next podcast with the literature. That would be fun.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good point to wrap.
Yeah, that is a good
point. Before I say something that starts in the segue.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you.